Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Stephanie. I am the executive assistant of our platform solutions team. Today, I have with me my colleague, Mark, and we're going to go over the November 2022 upgrade. So before we start off with some content, two quick reminders. This is being recorded, so you do have the option to go back and watch this later should you choose to. The recordings can be found on our socials, and it will be sent to you after this has wrapped up as well. And secondly, we are going to ask if we can hold questions till the end. So please pop them in the Q&A at the bottom and we'll get to them at the end. So Mark, please take it away.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Steph. Once again, I'm Mark Bridger. I'm the design team lead here at SmartSimple. Been here for about 11 years. I'm joining you from Toronto today. All right, and we're going to cover is, as we said, the November 2022 upgrade. All right, this is our last major upgrade of the year. We'll see you again in March with another upgrade, but there's some fun stuff in here, so let's go over it and see what's in there. So wiki.smartsimple.com is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the upgrades page, and this is where we list the things that are in the upgrade, as well as when there are service packs that get released, we list those at the bottom. Okay. All of our upgrade dates are here, so you're not surprised. This one will go live November 10th, and that's for the key release. There's two releases. We have a key release and a global release. The key release happens the second Thursday of every fourth month, and 2 weeks later, we have the global release for some of our managed, dedicated, and European clients. All that's listed here. The backup is upgraded 2 weeks before, so that way you have time to go in and see how the upgrade is going to affect your system. Again, those dates are listed here. We do have a video less than 5 minutes, or about 5 minutes every upgrade. This one was done by Garrett, so if you're used to my voice, you'll hear a new voice on there. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about global system upgrades. These are things that are going to happen automatically, and then later we'll talk about the things you can opt into. So the first thing I want to highlight is that we are going to enforce the deny access on the common portal. All right, so I want to show you this. So I'm going to go to the menu. I'm going to go to users. I'm going to go into a portal, and this is where our portal builder is. I'm going into the common role, which is a role that kind of aggregates all the roles together. And right down here, I can see the portal pages. So this is a portal page up here. You get links to portal pages up here. And when we're building our portals, we make those pages. And you can see I've got 3 portal pages here. This one is the media that's showing up here. These 2 are not showing up because I toggled off the visibility of the link. So if I come in here, you can see I have the setting here called display as header link. And because that's on, I can see that portal page here. If I want to create a portal page, but hide it from this menu, I would just toggle that off. Now, previously in older implementations, before we had that setting, people may have come in here and said deny access. So if they didn't want to see a link up in the header, they would have picked a role here, for example, and said deny access, and it would have just hidden it, but people could still access it. And then they would create a shortcut that would point to it. Now, since we have the visibility condition for showing and hiding it up here, deny access is going to actually deny access. So if you had a shortcut that was pointing to something that had deny access on the page, you'll get a deny access message. So what you need to do, if your shortcut says deny access, is come in here and just check this. If you have a deny access here, you want to turn that off, and then you probably want to just hide that page so it doesn't show up. All right, so that's the first thing. So again, we're going to enforce deny access. It's no longer going to be a visibility control. It's going to actually control the access. And if you want to hide links or pages from that top menu, you just toggle this off. The next thing we're going to do, and we're just giving you a lot of warning about this because we're not going to implement it in this upgrade, but we are going to implement it in the March upgrade in 2023. All right, is we're going to deprecate several variables around passwords. Okay, so what I encourage everyone to do is to go into your systems and update these now if you can. So if I go into global settings, I'm going to go into security, password and activation policies. This is where I have my new user emails. So here's my new user email and my password reset. Now, previously in older implementations, we would have had the @password@ variable. And what that would do is it would send a password to the user. So we'd say log in here, here's your username and password. However, sending passwords in plain text to people's emails is not really a good security practice. So we're going to no longer support doing that. Instead, what we're encouraging everyone to use is the activation link. So if you just click the sample template, for example, it will populate your new user email like this, and then you can modify it as you want. And the activation link, this is a time-sensitive link. So it sends out a link to someone, they click that in their email, and it brings them to the page where they enter the password that they want. So again, we want everyone to start using this activation link, and you want to update it here, and also right down here for the password reset. Now, if you have sign-up pages that also send out new user emails that are a little different, there's an easy way to find those as well. So I'm going to go to Global Settings. I'm going to go to Communications, and we've got this link here called System Email Templates. So this is a really nice place to go if you want to see all the email templates in your system. Now I'm looking for the new user emails. So I can say new user, and here we go. I can see I have several sign-up pages. And if I open those up, again, I can add the sample template and it will replace that password variable. Okay, so once again, we're not going to implement this right now, but in 4 months, we're going to enforce this. And so if you're using the old variables, they'll just come through as text. So you really need to update this over the next 4 months. And if you need help, reach out to our support team. They can easily help you to fix this. All right. While I'm here, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to skip ahead back to this communications. One thing that we did add this upgrade as well, talking about all these emails that you're dealing with, is the ability to export from here. So again, sometimes it can be hard to find, where's that email acknowledgement email that comes out from a workflow? Where's this one that comes out from the passwords? Where's this one that comes out from the sign-up pages? They're all found right here on this page. And if you want, you can export a complete set of all your emails, all your system emails, and then you can review them offline. So that's new, or I can pick a few of them and just export those. All right. And then I can download that, but I'm not going to download that. So that's something cool. The next thing I want to talk about is multi-factor authentication. Again, here at SmartSimple, security is kind of job one. So I want to talk about the changes we made to multi-factor authentication, because I think this is one of the biggest things in this upgrade. So first of all, if you ever set up multi-factor authentication before, I know we use it internally and several of our clients use it. It used to configure on the role. So you go into the role and configure it. In this upgrade, we moved that setting. All right, so it's now going to be under security, password and activation policies. And if I scroll down here, we've got a toggle. So I can toggle on if I want to use multi-factor authentication or not. Now, what I've done here is, if you do toggle it on, you have two options. So you can say which roles you want to use the one-time password, and that's like a Google authentication app. So for example, on my phone, I'll have a Google authentication app, and it'll give me a one-time code that I can enter. So I enter my username and password as normal, and then I'll enter my one-time code. And typically that would be, you might use that for your employees, people who you can tell them to download the Authenticator app. For other people, like maybe your applicants, you're probably going to want to do something like roles with verification code via SMS or email. So what that is, and I can show you that here, is basically they log in as normal with their username and password, and then they ask for a text message or an email that'll have the code in it, and they enter the code here. So again, those are the two options for multi-factor authentication. And it's configured now in the password and activation policy, so you can configure all the roles in a single place as opposed to configuring on each role individually. The next thing we added was this trusted device. So again, if your users are coming in all the time, maybe they're coming in and out 4 or 5 times a day, you may optionally enable the idea of having a trusted device. And then you may set how many days it's trusted. So again, the first time I log in, I have to use the MFA, but later if I don't want to, I can give someone a grace period of a day or two, so they don't have to keep putting it in all the time. Again, that's optional. But that came in this upgrade. Again, that's how it looks. One thing we do plan on doing, again, is in the new year, we really want to encourage everyone to take this MFA to heart, make sure your systems are as secure as possible. So we're going to, we plan to push this out. Now you can always opt out of it, but we'd really like everyone to start adopting the multi-factor authentication model. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is list views. So and here, I'm just gonna stop sharing my video just so you can see the screen better. There we go. All right, so with list views, if I went to the advanced search, we always had the system filters available here for people to select, okay? But when I had the advanced search off, previously the system filters did not show up. So people may not have known that you had the system filter access here, but you did. Now we've surfaced that so you can actually pick the system filters. Now you might say, well, I've got a lot of system filters that I don't want clients to see. That's fine. Let me show you how you can hide those system filters from the users, because sometimes you use system filters just for configuration, just for creating a tab or maybe portal section or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my settings here, into the grant, and here's the list views first off. And on any of the list views I look at, you'll see that there's a setting here called mark as configuration only. And so what that does is if you enable that, that hides the list view. But I'm talking about the filters. So the filters, we do it the exact same way. So if I come down here to the grant, I go to search filters, I can open up any of my filters. And then again, I can mark a filter as configuration only, and then it won't show up to my end users. So that's how you would hide your system filters. You can still, your system admins and the people configuring your system can still see them, but your end users won't see those system filters. Okay, so that's just something to note. System filters will show up, and this is how you hide them on a filter by filter basis. Invitations. If you've never used invitations, there's a couple of things here. We did this upgrade. First of all, invitations are a great way to collaborate on a record. So maybe I have a co-applicant or someone, a reviewer, or someone I want to come in and contribute to this application. I can enable invitations and I can pick people and invite them to contribute on this and assign them a specific role. So that's not new, but what is new is we've added this details button here. So with the details, you can see when they were invited, last action on this invitation, when they responded, and the reason for why they maybe accepted or declined or whatever comments they wanted to add. Okay, so I'll show you in a second how I turned on the comments as well, because it's not on by default. But the other thing we did is we enabled bulk importing these. So if you want, you can import a whole bunch of invitations on the level 3. Previously, you could only do it on the level 1 and 2. But let me show you how I turned on these details. Sorry, the comments. The details are going to show up, but the comments you have to turn on. So let me go into the settings here, grant, and go to invitation templates. And this is where I set up my invitation templates. And now if I look at this, here's the landing page where people come in. And then down here, if they accept, you can choose whether or not you're going to give them an ability to leave a comment. And same with if they decline. You can give them a reason for declining, let them enter it in or a comment by toggling those on and saving. So that's how you do that. The transaction pages typically used for publications, but some other things as well. We've added the left column there, so just note things have changed a bit on that page. The layout's moved around a little bit. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is when you're creating roles. So when you create a role, we've always been able to specify that a role is internal only, but now we've also specified that you can set roles as external only. So if you think about our hierarchy in our system, people are either in the internal hierarchy or in the external hierarchy. Internal typically being the people that you work with, and external typically being your applicants, your vendors, people of that sort. Now, when you create roles, some roles you only want people internal to have, whereas others you only want external. So when you create that role, you just pick the one you want, and then people can't assign that role to someone on the other side by accident, right? So if you have an employee role and it's only for internal users, you can stop people from accidentally assigning that to an applicant by saying it's internal users only, and vice versa with external users only. So this is a good way to kind of stop people from making mistakes like that. because people do make mistakes. It happens. They go down wrong paths. So I highly recommend you may want to set your roles as being internal or external only. This is more of an standard of living improvement. When you're creating an autoloader or scheduled report, we've added a button there to create it. So you don't have to jump back, create the smart folder, and then come back and reconfigure those things. The next big change is the breadcrumb. So the breadcrumb, we've made it a little less visually prominent, and it handles a little better on mobile devices and other screen sizes, especially when there's long text. The one thing to note about the breadcrumb is that the breadcrumb is location-based, not path-based. So a lot of times people assume it's a path-based, showing you where you came from, but our breadcrumb is location-based. It shows you where you are in the system. So if you're on the user, it'll show the organization, not how you got to the user. If you're on the level 2 grant, it'll show you the level 1 and the UTA. Not how you navigated there. So just be aware. I already talked about exporting system email templates. And if you're doing workflows and you're previewing emails, we've added the type and the status here, which is just a nice thing, again, to help you find that record you want to preview from inside a workflow. If you're doing group email, which is really nice, actually, let me show you this one. So maybe you've got a call coming up when something's closing, or there's just something you want to notify people about. I can go into any of these list views. For example, here in my level 1, I could select a couple of grants, and then I hit this group email button. And from here, I can pick who I want to email. So for example, we've just added a primary contact, but maybe I want whoever the owner of the record is or someone in a specific role. I can select those. And then from here, we've also added this, I can search for a template that I want. So for example, if I start typing, you can see, oh, I want sample template, and then I can send them a custom message that I want. So it's a nice way of doing that. The two new things here were being able to search for a template if you have lots of them, and also being able to pick the primary contact as someone you want to email. That one. We talked about the invitations and this new button that's going to show up to show the details. You were always able to see the details in the logs, but this just makes it much more convenient. Oh yeah, so I'll go inside this record here. So we've always known to search your level 2s and your level 3s, and here I've got this is a list of level 2s of a specific type that I've created here. We've added the search now here. So previously these sub lists or lists within a record didn't have a search, but in case you have lots of activities, we've added that now. Next thing I want to show you is the dynamic visibility controls. Now we've always had this ability, but we've extended it to the custom lookup options. And I don't know how many people have adopted the custom lookup options, but I want to show you these. So I'm going to walk you through both of them. All right, so if I go into this record here, and I have, let's see here, yeah. So here I've got this field, and I'm using dynamic lookup options here. And when I pick it, using the dynamic visibility options, I'm making a second field show up. Okay, so we always do that with normal fields, but with the lookup options, we didn't have that ability, and now we do. So I'm just going to show you those two things. So I'm going to open up this field. And this field is a select one drop-down list. And you will notice here that I've enabled dynamic content and I've enabled custom lookup options. So there's no semicolon delimited list here of values. Instead, I've populated that list. I've imported that list of values and I'm using it somewhere else. And I'll show you where that is. So if I come in here, global settings, system, and custom lookup options, this is where I imported my list of custom options. So this is really good if you had like, let's say you have a whole bunch of codes or something that's very specific to just your organization and probably a long list that you didn't want to put in manually. You can import that list of codes and then have it here. Now, the next thing I did there, I come into Submission Manager, is I set up the dynamic visibility controls. Now, this one's a very simple one that I had set up here. I'll just show you that. So I'm in dynamic field visibility controls. And you can see here's my field called the education institutions. And if I selected the first value, which for me, I put the store value as 100, then I show this field. So again, I can kind of show and hide fields based on the values I've selected, not only from the predefined options, but if I've imported those options using a custom lookup. Configuration mode, I just showed you that. We always had it in edit mode. Recently, we moved it over, and you can now access that from view mode if you're a system admin. It's a great way to find your fields. Probably one of my favorite enhancements, because before we had this, it was very hard to find those fields you wanted to work with. The next thing I want to show you is our web page views. So our web page views are used usually to create documents, PDFs, that kind of thing. So here I've got a button that's going to open up a web page view that would open up a PDF that I could convert into a PDF. So we've always had that ability, but the new thing we've added is this page layout option. So you'll see the page layout option on login pages, on sign up pages. And if you put it as custom, then you can see the HTML, you can modify that. Maybe I want to add an SS attach in here. Maybe I want to have a custom letter in here. But if I don't need to do any of that customization, I suggest you leave it on default. The benefit of default, especially for all the sign up pages, the login pages in here, is that you're always going to have the latest and greatest sample template. And what that means is if we make any changes for security or usability or look and feel, you'll get those changes automatically. Whereas if you start customizing it, you may have to go back and retrofit that at a later date to take advantage of some of those changes that we make. So by default, when we make web page views in the future, after this upgrade, it's going to say default. But if you want to customize it, you can still do that. You just have to click customize, and then you can see this. So just be aware. We're trying to encourage everyone to move to the default because we really want people to be future-proof in this kind of scenario. If you're using Adobe Sign or another vendor for e-signatures, we've added a failed e-signature queue. So it makes it really easy. You don't have to look through the logs to see, or run a report to see. You can just go to the e-signature queue, and right there, you'll see a tab that shows you any e-signatures that failed to finish processing. And the last thing that's going to happen automatically I want to talk about is the notes. So when we talk about notes, so here's the notes. If I'm a user and I have no access, so I can't view or edit any notes, we're no longer going to show this tab, right? So, I mean, I think it's a logical change, but I just want to make people aware that you have to be able to view or edit a note type to be able to see this notes tab going forward. All right, I'm going to jump ahead again. So the next thing I want to talk about is the notes. So you'll notice here that my notes, and I just added a new note here, I now have subject here, right? So if I go back, and there you can see I've added a subject, and I've got the ability to expand and collapse these. Now this is a new option. If you want to be able to put notes in and have the expand and collapse, you can turn that on, and I'll show you where you can do that. So I'll go to Global Settings, System, and right down here, Enable Subject Line for Notes. So it's a new feature. We've enhanced the notes because some people have a lot of notes and they want some type of summary or subject on those notes, and they want to be able to expand and collapse them while they're working with their notes. So if you're interested in that, just turn that on. All right, so now let's talk about all the things that you're going to opt into. So these are more of the fun things. The first thing is we've enabled autosave. It will give me the option to autosave fields. So when I'm working on a record, maybe it's an application, quite often we force people to come down and click save. But if you want, you can automatically save values as they go. So what I'm talking about here is, for example, I change this value to 5, it's 25, I click off, and you can see that it says field saved. So what happened there is it saved this field. So if I want to turn this on, I can turn this on and I can start saving as the client goes. Again, now it's going to save this field, right? I can set some text in here. As soon as I click off, it says field saved. Now, thing to note is it saves when you click off the field if you've made a change. So, if I'm typing a whole essay in here and I don't click off, well, I have to click off to get it to save. The other thing to note is that some fields won't save. So for example, the application type and the status, if you change those, it doesn't auto save those. But the other fields, it will. So I'll show you where you can turn that on if that's something you want to do. Go to, again, System, Global Setting Systems, and automatically save field values when editing records. So if you want to turn that on, feel free to turn that on and try it out. It's a brand new feature. Yeah. All right. The next thing which you might have noticed is we've added the ability to specify some button classes. So these are predefined colored classes that you can use for your buttons. So I've seen a lot of systems where they may have a lot of buttons along the bottom here, and where you may benefit from some visual priority around these buttons. So I recommend that you be judicious. You don't want to put a whole bunch of colors on there, but for example, here, what I did is buttons that have a negative consequence or bring back, I marked as the red, whereas buttons that I want people to press to help them navigate them forward, I marked as the green. So these are kind of the positive actions. These are the kind of negative actions. And I'll show you how I did that. So we've got different ways that we can create buttons in the system. First of all, there's some buttons that automatically get generated, like the save and the delete. And so to control those, I go to branding, colors and styles. And right here, this is where I would pick it. So I pick the delete button here, and I can pick the save button there. And that will control the saves and delete buttons on those bottom bars. Now, the next place that we also do this is where we create our custom buttons. So the custom buttons, such as my submit buttons, are done here. So grant, submit and save buttons. And so if I've created the button myself, like the submit button, this is where I would pick that. So I've created this button myself. I put the success or the green for positive on that, and I saved it. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the media library. I know I talk about this a lot, but I do really love this feature because it allows you to stream audio and video. But let me show you this, what we did in this one. So typically, if you've enabled the media library, for example, I've got my media here and I can play it in line. I can, if I move on to other tabs, I can still see it here. I can move it around. I can close that. But one of the things we've done here is you can see that this one is shareable. I can get this link and I can share it with somebody. I can share that link out and someone can watch that video without logging in. It'll stream right from the streaming server. Now, the way I did that is after I uploaded it, I clicked on the properties here and I said enable sharing. And that means this one can be shared and this one cannot be shared. Now, by default, everything is not shared. But if you have, let's say this, a file folder or a media library field, and you always want to share everything in there, maybe you're putting some help files in there or something that you actually want to share all the time, you can do that now. So you can default the shared on for files uploaded. And once again, if you never used this before, it's the upload multiple file storage field. But what I turned on was I enabled the media library. And then if you want by default these to be sharing, you don't want people to have to go into the properties and click that share button. You can just say enable media sharing by default, and that will allow people to stream the videos that you put in without having to go to the properties. Even if you turn this on, you can still choose to stop sharing files on an individual basis, but this will default them on be shareable. A few minor things. We talked about the notes already. So just another option in the shortcuts. Latitude and longitude, you can now add those to the autoloader, which is nice. And if you're using the Stripe integration for payments, you can now include You can now do some metadata mapping, so you can include some other fields and data in the charges submitted to Stripe, so they can see that in their bill. So that was a nice thing. Beyond that, there's a bunch of things here for admins, and we've added some. I mean, the only one I'd really like to highlight here is we've added some more functions to the report builder. So if you, let me go into reports for a second here. So if I'm in, this is how we build our reports. I go into the report builder. Right down here, here's the report builder help, where it has a lot of the different functions that we have. And you can see kind of here with some examples on how the different functions are. But the one thing that I wanted to highlight was we've added in some SS Func here, which is really around date calculations.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mark. So as stated before, we are recording this, so you will have the availability to watch this afterwards. It can be found on our socials and it can be found on our website. In the meantime, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a great day. Thanks for sharing it with us, guys and girls.